Good day, this is Justin for the RC and Coffee YouTube channel and Facebook page. Please consider subscribing. So today, unfortunately, I still have my little helper there. She didn't want to speak too much. She's too cold to go outside, so if you hear snoring, that's her, and she decided that she had enough of the chair, so she is here for now. Either way, so that's Yoko the pug. Yoko, say hello. Hello, hi. That's Yoko. Anyways. All right, today we will take a look at the Trailfinder 2 and its qualities as a chassis suitable for a skill construction. So we have the version with the 2-speed transmission. The one thing that's really interesting about this chassis, it's the amount of space between the highest points on the chassis railing. So the highest points are here and I believe there, and you have this entire flat, relatively flat section on which you can put whatever you want to put on there. So as you can see, the transmission sits lower because it is connected to that lower point there, the servos and everything else. Also, another quality of this architecture is that the transmission not only it sits fairly low, but it keeps the motor lower than the shock towers. So your number one, the things to look at will be the shock towers there, but your motor will be essentially only 2 inches, rather, not even actually, 1.5 inches over the highest point of the railing, which is really good. That way your motor won't be sticking out of your hood. So that's always a good point. Furthermore, the servo sits well at the front. Same with the motor there. The servo and the motor are completely at the front. And basically, if I was to remove this bumper there, you'd have nothingness, and you're plenty of room to stop your hard body, which is also a reason why RC4WD drive utilizes this chassis for hard bodies. Now, something that is a key point in the ability to use this chassis for a skill construction, the T-case sits lower than the chassis. So that's not ideal for performance, because obviously it protrudes from underneath and the links are connected lower than what you would see on an XCX2, for instance. However, for skill construction, it's ideal. Now, because this particular chassis has the 2-speed transmission, the servo there kind of defeats the purpose by sticking like a sore thumb way up in the air, about not a foot, an inch over the chassis, but still, it's something that can be relatively easily accommodated, and that is definitely higher than the highest point of the transmission. You also have a dedicated spot, again, one of the lowest spot to put your battery there, and everything else sits way at the back, relatively flush to the railing, so you have that faux reservoir here that can be used for your receiver. And you'll notice that the ESC there, that's the original Axial one, sits also lower than the shock towers there. In terms of price, this retails for $399.99. It only has one wheelbase option, which is 12.36. I do not see a way to change that just looking at the chassis. So that right here, definitely limits your options. But it's a fairly common one and will accommodate rigs with in need of a longer wheelbase. The position of the gearbox is front, so definitely ideal. It could be pushed. It's definitely not like the modified one transmission for the XCX2 that I presented earlier, that is literally sitting before the front axle, and actually the transmission and the motor are sitting both in front of the front axle. It's a more traditional positioning, but still very, very good for this application. This one has a 2-speed, but you can get a 1-speed, which I would recommend if you're going to be doing a skill build. Again, why would you, the need for performance probably will take a back seat with regards to the proper scale. What's interesting for this guy is the axle width. The axle width is 7.09 inches, so that's really, really good. It's one of the narrowest proposition in here, which you want, because most of the time the axles are the giveaway point that it's not a real truck. And not only are they thin, they're actually, the thickness of the axle itself, so not only are they not wide, I should say, their thickness is really good. They're thin, they're realistic, the pumpkin is small, it's not sitting particularly high. Really, this was designed for looks more than performance, but they're very durable and they're very skilled, so that's a really good point. The shock length varies depending on the front and the back. It's 70 inches at the front, 90 inches at the back. and the shock towers are not even the same height. I'm not sure why that is, but that's always good to have a lower, a lower shock tower at the back. That's usually where you want the body to sit, and typically underneath the hood you have more room to put your shock towers at the front. So that's really a good point. The chassis stiffness out of 5, definitely a hard 5. I mean, that's almost half a centimeter of alloy there. That thing won't bend. There's no way. The aftermarket support out of 5, I'd say 3. There's a lot of parts, however, definitely not as many as Axials, but you have access to their CC hand that does a lot of stuff, really good work. You can find their work on AliExpress as well, so you're not stuck with RC4WD drive. There's a bunch of options, Amy and Hobbies, the main ones, but also online stores carry parts for those. The overall perceived quality of the chassis, I'll give it a 4 out of 5. Definitely a lot of metal there. That's literally metal everywhere. It's definitely one of the highest perceived quality here. The skill look of the architecture, out of 5, I'll give it a 3.5. I'll give it a 3.5 actually, mostly because of the chassis. The chassis, it's not a C railing, it's a full rail. There's not, it's a fairly flat chassis that has a general scale look, but that is clearly designed to accommodate an RC architecture, which is good when you're going to create an RC car, which may not be as good if you're going to make it look super scale. And by this I mean, there's not a whole point, not a lot of variation between the lowest point of the chassis and the highest point of the chassis, and very few chassis are that flat in real life. The skill of the axles, we discussed that before. That's a hard 5. Definitely, probably the best actually so far in the rigs that I have with me as we speak. We'll see as I bring in more rigs on the table if that changes. The skill look of the chassis, we discussed that, that's a 3. Skill look of the shocks, for that, I'll give it a 2.5. I mean, it's not super realistic. There's no fake reservoir. It's literally a shock tower to have a shock tower. There's nothing fancy about that. It works, that's it. The chassis customizability, I'll give it a 2.5. There's not a whole lot of customizability, but there's a lot of ease to put different bodies. So you don't have to customize it as much. So it's a 2.5 in the sense that it's hard to work on, but the good thing is you don't have to work on it a whole lot to make it work. So it's kind of a double-edged sword here. So the shocks adjustability, you have the ability to have cantilever shocks, so that's really good. And overall, the average is 3.75 out of 5. So it compares favorably to the 3.17 out of 5 that we have for the SEX10 II. So that's it for the Trailfinder 2. I hope you enjoyed this review. Please subscribe, press on the like and the notification button in order to see more of those. So it's bye for now, and we'll see you in the next part. Thank you. All right, Hugo. Let's press on the little button there.